I'm graduating, I'm turning 18, I'm still working a job that I need in order to afford college. I'm going to college in 3 months. I'm moving from my childhood house of like, at the time, 16 years. And so, yeah, it was definitely even on Baker and taking that time to stop and look around me. I was like, I have not done that since he died.
That's Carly Dykes, a student at the University of Washington in Seattle. When Carly was about to turn 18, her dad passed away from cancer. She decided to climb Mount Rainier, Washington State's highest point, in his memory. This ignited her passion for mountaineering. As Carly gained more experience in the mountains, she found herself in male-dominated environments more often than not. She started to seek more female mentorship and applied for, and won, a summit scholarship for an all-women's climb of Mount Baker in 2024. I'm Angie, and this is See Her Outside, brought to you by the Karen Project and the Summit Scholarship Foundation. We share stories of women, girls, and gender-diverse adventurers to promote belonging and visibility in nature. We hope that this story inspires you to advocate for a more inclusive outdoors. Nature and grief have a powerful connection. According to research published in Frontiers in Psychology, spending time in natural environments can help us feel more awe and tranquility, which helps people process complex emotions like grief. Another study in ecopsychology found that time outdoors can reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety that often go hand in hand with loss. But let's be real, many of us don't need research to tell us that this is true. We go outside because it makes us feel good. Carly had always enjoyed time outdoors, but with the death of her dad, she felt a greater pull to make an adventure meaningful. I asked Carly what led her to the mountains in the first place.
I have been kind of indoctrinated into mountaineering for, I think, as long as I can remember. My dad and my grandpa, like big backpackers, had done a few summits themselves. And so the month before I turned 18, my dad passed away because he had stage 4 cancer. And so a month went by, I turned 18, and I was like, I feel like I need a big change. And I remember sitting on my couch one day, and I told my mom, I was like, I'm going to summit Mount Rainier. And she was like, why? Where did that come from? I mean, like, I've always been outdoorsy, just never in that sense. And so I told her, like, I'm going to sign up for a climb. I'm going to fundraise the money, and I'm going to go do this. And it'll kind of be a testament to my dad and how I remember him, and he summited the mountain before, so, like a nice way to, like a full circle moment. For the next 3 or 4 months, I fundraised and I made Facebook posts and contacted local companies, and I was like, I'm freshly 18, like I don't have any money, this is why I want to do this, and I ended up raising enough money to rent my own gear and make the summit.
This climb of Mount Rainier kickstarted Carly's mountaineering passion, which you'll hear about more in a moment. But first, I wanted to know what her fundraising climb of Mount Rainier and her later climb of Mount Baker did for Carly to help her cope with the grief of her dad's death.
I feel like I'm such a go, go, go person. So I worked a lot of service jobs in high school, and I think I remember working the day after he died because I was like, as long as I stay busy, I don't have to process it. And I think for me, climbing is a guaranteed 12 to 14 hours where I'm forced to think about it and forced to process it because I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not concerned with anything else. You're walking up. It's kind of a nice, like, motion-filled muscle memory. I'm just walking. I get into the rhythm of it, and it gives me time to process something without all, like, outside voices and thinking about school and work and how I can distract myself.
Yeah, it's like a healthy coping mechanism in times of stress or grief. Was there anything else in those initial stages of grief? Were you going out into nature in other ways, or were there other things that helped you cope?
Yeah, so I do a lot of rock climbing, and it was what I just described about mountaineering, but on a smaller scale. So when I was out top roping or in the woods, doing some bouldering, it was guaranteed time where I'm on the wall or I'm on a rock and I'm forced to think about how my body's feeling and how my mind's feeling. And a lot of the times that kind of went to how I was processing grief. Other than that, a lot of walking. So it was nice because how I was coping and training for my climb kind of went hand in hand. So two birds with one stone.
For Carly and myself, and maybe you, spending time outdoors is a tool for emotional processing. But not everyone can take that for granted. Plenty of barriers still exist to meaningful time outdoors, which Carly realized on her Rainier climb.
What was unique about this experience was that I was placed on a team of only men. And so it was me and 6 male climbers and 2 male guides, which nothing wrong with that. They were great. I had a good time, but it kind of put into perspective for me the fact that my only role models in mountaineering were men. And I signed up for this climb and it's only men and I'm on the mountain and there's only men on Camp Muir. And I was like, why is that the case? I mean, the outdoors in general, I feel like I'd always associated with being so inclusive and welcoming. I think this was naive of me to think, but I assumed that it was accessible because, you can walk outdoors and drive 30 minutes and go hike a trail and there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And so after completing this climb, I was like, okay, I really like this. I don't understand why more women aren't into it. I don't know what next steps are. And so I started doing more research. I was talking to my friends about their experiences with specifically rock climbing and hiking and kind of got a better grasp as to how toxic the male-dominated industry of climbing in general was.
Carly started searching for women's focused programs in mountaineering. One day, while scrolling a mountaineering Facebook group, she stumbled across the Summit Scholarship Foundation. The Summit Scholarship Foundation's goal is to advance gender equity on and off the mountain. Every year, the Summit Scholarship Program offers a series of women's mountaineering stipends to help break down the barriers to entry in the big mountain realm for women of all walks of life. You can learn more about the adventure scholarships and how to apply for them or support them at www.summitscholarship.org. Anyway, Carly won a Summit Scholarship. Here's what happened when she found out that she was accepted on an all-women's Mount Baker climb.
I'm in a sorority at the University of Washington, and I remember this so vividly because we were getting ready for our formal chapter, which is like this formal meeting some Mondays, and we're all in like dresses. And I remember the whole room being quiet and my phone goes off, and I like picked it up and it had the little check mark, so I knew it wasn't a spam call. And it was from, oh gosh, I think it was from either Nevada or Utah. And so I like sneak my way out into the bathroom and I took the call, and it was, I think it was Shay. And she was like, hi, is this Carly? And I was like, yeah, like, who is this? And she's like, this is Shay at the Summit Scholarship. You've been offered the Glacier 2 School Baker Climb. And I remember I just like, I sat down on the bathroom floor and I was like, there is no way. Because I had gotten an email that explained my application was moved to the next like smaller pool of applicants. So I was like, okay, there's like a bigger possibility that this actually happens. But getting the call randomly, and I sat down. I was like, that is my first instinct. I need to process this. And then I went out back to the meeting and I told my friends around me, I was like, guys, I got the scholarship. And they'd all known about it because I would not shut up about it. And they were like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. It was amazing. It was super surreal.
So as you're getting closer to the climb, did you have a specific goal or intention or wish for yourself around this climb? Or was it like, oh, it's just another adventure?
Yeah, so going into the climb, I'd actually, in the months prior, accepted a job at a mountaineering company down in Rainier to work rentals, retail, get my foot in the door in terms of guiding. Again, I found myself in a really, I was the only female employee besides the manager who lived offsite. And I think going into Baker and knowing that I would be around so many strong women that had been in the outdoor industry for so long, I was looking for wisdom. And I think I was at a point in my, I want to say career as a mountaineer. I don't know if that's like the right term, but where I needed clarification as to what my intentions were in terms of continuing mountaineering. And I think I was looking for some sort of like shared experience of being in such a male dominated sport and how stuck that can make you feel as a woman. And I got that 1,000 times fold. It was amazing.
We believe in the power of all women's climbing groups. Accomplished rock climber Lynn Hill once said, "Many of the women I've taught to climb have a better sense of balance than the men. I think it has to do with being a little more sensitive to it rather than relying on strength. It's also a reflection of a passive attitude, balancing your way up on the rock rather than attacking it." Carly noticed a similar difference on her climb.
So far, the main theme that I've taken away from climbing with a male team versus a female team is climbing with a male team felt much more like conquering the mountain. We, even going up to Camp Muir, it was like, oh, we're going to take down this mountain. We're going to summit this. We're going to be the best. We're going to do it the fastest. And then climbing with an all women's team was coexisting with the mountain. When we were up on Baker for those 5 days, I learned so much about the indigenous history behind Baker and snow science and the idea behind the climb being the most important part versus the summit, which I had heard from my grandpa, but hearing it from guides specifically was so meaningful because the guides I had climbed with on Rainier were like, we are going to summit no matter what. This is like the only thing that'll stop us from summiting is death. And yeah, which is pretty crazy. And so going with awe in the summit scholarship, having guides that weren't afraid to admit when they needed a break on the climb up or weren't afraid to be like, okay, I think we should take it slower today. Or today we're going to learn about snow science because, you know, like we all need to rest before our actual summit. It was a total 180. And that's not to say anything bad about the men I climbed with. They were really nice guys. But climbing with women, I walked away from that experience and I felt like I couldn't even put it into words because it would lose meaning. We spent the last night on Baker talking about how we would retell this story to our family and friends. And none of us could think of a way to put it into words that would like adequately describe the emotions we had felt on that mountain. We cried together, we laughed together. And then coming down from Rainier, it was still amazing.
You say that you learned a lot about yourself. What are some of those big lessons that you learned from this climb in particular?
From Baker in particular, I learned a lot about listening to my body, which I think I have a hard time doing, listening to my mind and looking at my surroundings. I remember this one day we were doing some sort of glacier school. I forget what the like actual topic was, but we had climbed right above our camp, right under the glacier. Kat sat us down on rocks and she was like, okay, take 5 to 10 minutes and I want you to make 3 observations about the nature beside, like all around you. And so we all sat there in silence, looking just at the mountain and the mountain range behind and making these observations. And I was doing self-reflection as this was happening. And I was like, I never observe. I feel like I'm so concerned with what's in front of me and the bigger picture that I don't stop and make small observations. And that experience in particular was so meaningful to me because I was like, I can't remember the last time I've taken 10 minutes to look at my surroundings and really take in what's happening around me.
We spend so much of our days, probably most of our time every day looking down, right? And it's almost shocking sometimes when we look up and really take something in because it's just a perspective we're not used to anymore.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Even being in Seattle and at such a big university, everything here is so work oriented. And I feel like there's such a pressure to go, 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 head down, like keep your eyes forward, look at what's in front of you, look at the bigger picture. And I hadn't really experienced the slow pace of enjoying what's around you ever, I don't think fully until I was on Baker. Kat specifically was so connected to the mountain and had so many experiences up there, and her respect for the mountain in general was so inspiring because I'm like, this is a home for her, and I think it was so cool.
You've said it multiple times now that you're a very like go, go, go person and society wants you to like go, go, go all the time, right? And look down and keep going. And were you getting pressure from society to keep go, go, going? Or were people allowing you the space to just chill?
I think there was a pressure. So what was a little bit unique about this experience was he died. And then a month later, within the same weekend, I graduated high school and turned 18. And then 2 weeks after that, we immediately moved houses. So even if I didn't feel a pressure, I think the natural sequence my life was going in, I was like, I have to go, go, go. Like, I'm graduating, I'm turning 18, I'm still working a job that I need in order to afford college. I'm going to college in 3 months. I'm moving from my childhood house of like, at the time, 16 years. And so, yeah, it was definitely even on Baker and taking that time to stop and look around me. I was like, I have not done that since he died. And it's been almost a year now. And I was like, that is so unhealthy. I don't know how I've been like coping with that. But yeah.
In June of 2024, Carly met the other women on the Baker team through Awe Expeditions. Awe Expeditions organizes mountaineering and remote adventures for women by women, and they're one of the main trip leaders behind the Summit Scholarship Foundation's trips. Here's how the climb went.
Meeting Sunny for the first time, she gave me the biggest hug, and I was like, it was like a sigh of relief. I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. I'm going to be on Mount Baker tomorrow with all these women. This is so cool. And so that night we had our welcome dinner, and we just sat and we talked for so long about everything. It was lighthearted topics, heavy stuff, why we were there. And I hadn't felt such a desire to open up to a complete group of strangers in that way in my whole life. And we get to spend the next 5 days together. We woke up the next morning, all got coffee together, go head on up, do our gear check. And I just remember such an overwhelming sense of thankfulness that I, especially being significantly younger than everybody else there, was treated not differently at all. There was no ounce of, feeling like they needed to talk things down to me or take weight off my back in terms of like gear distribution, and being treated as an adult by these women that I was already looking up to, and I've known them for like 24 hours, was so fulfilling. So 2 days in, I was like, I am so stoked. This is already the coolest experience of my life. We could turn around and go home right now, and I would still probably talk about this forever. I feel like a lot of the times for me, when I'm in the mountains or I'm backpacking and I'm in the middle of nowhere, time goes by so slow. Like, time does not exist. And in this sense, I could not get enough daylight with these people. I was like, the minute the sun would go down and they'd be like, oh, we should probably go to bed, I was like, I can't wait to fall asleep so like the night will go by faster and I can wake up and hang out with them again. That was so fun. I think when a summit's approaching and you're learning so much new information and you're really pushing your body to its physical limits, and there's the anxiety of knowing that you're going to climb this mountain looming over your camp, emotions were heightened, and it kind of, I think, segued the way that our conversations went, which was amazing. We talked about like our families and our pasts and what had brought us there. And so me and Isabella were the only two Summit Scholarship recipients. And then there were two other women that were on the climb with us who were so amazing. And we all came from such different walks of life that there was just such an abundance of stories and life experiences. And I was like, I don't even feel the need to say anything. I could listen to you all talk for hours, and I'm taking in so much. I just remember, I think I always get like this, but my anxiety being so high, getting up, putting your gear on, putting the rope on, and being like, there is no turning back. Like, we are in this. And as I said before, the only other rope team I had climbed with was all men. And so I think there was a lot bigger pressure to ignore how your body was feeling and to keep pushing forward. Whereas I was right behind Sunny, and we were having like conversation the whole time, and we were all checking in on each other. And we did this thing to like kind of naturally like cadence the pace, where if we needed to stop, somebody would yell red, and then the whole rope team would yell red, and then we'd all stop. And there was never any ounce of animosity or, like, why are we stopping? I'm doing fine. Let's just keep going. Everybody was so respectful of each other and taking longer breaks if we need them. And it was such a respectful experience, I would say, overall. So making the actual summit was crazy because I looked down at my phone and I remember seeing that it was my birthday and it was 6 a.m. and I was standing on the top of Mount Baker with all these women that I had met like 4 days prior. And it was the most surreal, like, where am I? What is going on? This is so cool. Yeah, we made the summit, came back down. They had set up the camp for me. They had a happy birthday sign. Kat made me this snow ice cream with like coconut flakes and chocolate shell and candles on it, which was so sweet. And that night, we all ate. The food was amazing. I forgot to mention that. That was a huge part of it. We had bacon mac and cheese, and we all shared songs together. And so Isabella sang this. I still listen to it to this day. It's this song that's kind of like a shanty. It's called Captain something. I'm forgetting the actual name, but she sang it for us. And we all sat there in awe and we are like, it was so beautiful. And then another woman on the climb sang a choir song that she had learned in village choir. And we were just like, we were laughing and we were singing together. And we were talking about how when we get off the mountain and we have reception, we're going to share these songs and we're going to listen to them and think of each other. And it was so amazing. I was physically so tired, but mentally the best I'd ever been. And my roommates, when I came home, they were like, you just seem so different. Like, you seem on another plane. And I was like, yeah, it's indescribable.
There's something that you notice in yourself day to day now that's different from before that one climb?
Yeah, I think I'm a lot more conscious of how my backbone is. I was talking to Danny, Sunny, and Kat, who were the three guides on the trip, about my like grapple with moving down to this seasonal job at 19 alone and being the only woman there, and looking for their experiences, advice. And I remember Kat telling me specifically, she was like, do not let them treat you any negative way. Like, any way that you are not comfortable with being treated, you need to like stand up for yourself because nobody else is there to do it for you. And that's something that I remember every single day. I remind myself. I'm like, remember what Kat said on Mount Baker? Like, I can't let people walk all over me. And especially being a woman in a male-dominated sport, I think it's so important to be able to stand your ground and know your strengths and know your capabilities, which I think this is natural for, especially teenage girls, letting that slip away from you. She checked in on me, I think a month after the climb, and said the same thing. She was like, I want to make sure everybody's treating you the way you want to be treated. And I was like, you know what? I think about that every day. And yeah, I'm working towards it.
Oh yeah, I definitely think that the times I've had to speak up for myself inside or at work or whatever are because of the lessons that I've learned outside.
100%.
There's so much to learn.
Gets more manageable.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good word for it. Was there a moment on the climb of like actual tension, or, somebody was struggling, or maybe you were struggling and you had to work as a team to get through a low point?
We had two separate rope teams, and we had a woman on the second rope team turn around because she wasn't feeling good. She was listening to her body and was like, I just, this isn't for me right now. And so her and Kat turned around, and then the other person on the rope team she was like, I want to go up if it's possible. And so we had to do this whole switch around of attaching her to our rope. And it was really cool because we had learned all these skills about tying like extra knots into a rope if you need to rescue somebody, which wasn't the case, but it was cool to see it in action and to see everybody work so swiftly and so cohesively in order to get her on our rope team. And I think the whole event in itself took around 5 minutes. It was so quick. And so I wouldn't say there was tension because all of us were very understanding of the fact that she was listening to her body. She had to turn around. That's amazing. And I'm glad she did, because if she were to have stayed quiet and put herself through suffering, I think that would have been 1,000 times worse. But yeah, that was, I think, a point in which we were all, one, worried for her and worried for her well-being, and two, concerned about how the rest of the climb would go. Because losing, two people on a rope team is pretty, I hadn't experienced it before, but I'm like, those are my friends. Those are my climbing partners. My priority is to make sure they're okay. But I think it taught me to also trust that they're strong women and they're listening to their bodies and they will be fine. And what's important is that we now take care of each other and we continue going. It was an interesting experience.
Thinking about spending time in nature with women and also knowing like there are still a lot of barriers for women and a lot of people to get outside or let alone climb a volcano, summit a volcano. What's at stake here for women who like aren't getting outside? And, or in other words, like what do they have to gain from time in nature together?
I think for me, spending time in nature with women is the closest thing I've had to like a spiritual awakening. And it's just very centered around listening to your body and listening to the environment around you. And like I'd mentioned before, coexisting with nature versus, conquering a hike or conquering a mountain or whatever it may be. The times that I've gone on hikes with the women in my life or climbs of any sort, I've walked away feeling like I have meshed my life with another person and I've learned so much from them. It's never felt competitive or felt at any point like we were pushing each other out of our comfort zones, just more so listening to each other and taking care of each other and, what can be a high stress, high danger environment. So I think in every sense possible, it's brought me closer to every woman in my life that I've been in any outdoor setting with. It's amazing. I love sharing it with my friends even who don't, like necessarily know how to get into hiking even, or like mountaineering or rock climbing, whatever it may be. Being able to bring other women who are in a place that I once was when I was scared to go to the climbing gym alone because I didn't want to look stupid and I didn't know the etiquette. Being able to bring them into this scene and show them that it's only as intimidating as you make it has been one of the most rewarding experiences I've had in my 19 years alive.
Is your grandpa still alive? And if so, have you debriefed this climb with him?
Yeah, I just came back from Spokane yesterday, which is where I'm from. And so my grandpa is, I think in every sense, he is so beyond excited that I'm into climbing because my grandma, she cares, but he's like, she can only be my captive audience for so long. Same with my mom. He's like, I can say these things to her and I don't know what it means to her, but he has this really cool book from 1970 of all of the summits he's ever done in Washington. It is so cool. And so this last trip specifically, especially as my climbing season's ending, I was like, I want to do some reflection about the climbs I've done. And what better way to do that than to look at this journal of the same climbs my grandpa did 50 years prior. And so he had climbed Baker 2 or 3 times, and I was reading his entries about his experiences. And then I went over to see him the next day and talked a little bit more with him about, my experience on Baker and what that was like in comparison to his climb. And I think it's baffling to him that there's a community that's willing to take somebody so young under their wing, because he was like, I was interested in this at a young age and there was, no sort of mentorship. And so when I'm explaining to him that I got to spend this week in the mountains with all of these women that were so willing to bestow so much knowledge upon me, he was like, that is so cool. And I'm so glad that you're in such good hands because I love telling him about my climbs. I will keep him as my captive audience for hours.
There are countless other women out there who would thrive on an all-women's Baker climb like Carly's. But it's not as simple as just buying some boots and getting out there. Finances, lack of quality gear, and sexism often stand in the way of people accessing adventure. That's why the Karen Project exists. We gather a group of volunteers who want to get out and give back, and you're invited to join us. If you have an adventure in mind this year, what if you turned it into an adventure fundraiser? By crowdfunding in your community, you'll help make the Summit Scholarship Program expand to more women like Carly. And it has a ripple effect. Carly's already on a mission to introduce more women to mountaineering.
Coming out of the Baker climb and then telling people about my experience and learning about women my age, especially at the University of Washington, that have had such negative experiences in the climbing community, it's really a sobering feeling. So I feel like a lot of my time since coming out of Baker has been spent doing advocacy for getting back into mountaineering. I had a friend that I was talking to who worked for a guiding company, like very, very briefly. And she was telling me about, even within the few weeks that she was there, what heinous forms of misogyny and microaggression she experienced in the guiding industry. Again, I think I was still naive in the fact that this was happening day to day to so many different women. And so, yeah, I've been doing a lot of advocacy about getting into the Summit Scholarship and what I can do to bring more women into mountaineering. I bought like 2 extra pairs of crampons and I've been going around to all my friends and I'm like, guys, if anybody wants to do, these are my climbs for next season. If anybody wants to do them, like, please. I have so much extra gear. I have 4 ice axes. Like, we can all go.
Personally, I wouldn't be the outdoors woman I am today if a woman hadn't reached out to me and invited me to climb with her. I've felt the impact of being in a community of women who love supporting each other in the wild. So I'm thrilled that Carly is already finding ways to give back.
I think my wish for women in the outdoors is for them to not have the pressure to spend their whole career climbing or hiking, trying to prove themselves. And I wish for a community in the outdoors in which women feel adequate and strong coming into it versus trying to find their place in a community that doesn't feel like they have a part in.
Adventure teaches women lessons we can't learn indoors. Carly and many other recipients of Summit Scholarships will take what they learn from adventure and apply it to all parts of life through grief, through celebration, through fear, and through advocacy. I invite you to join us through the Cairn Project or the Summit Scholarship Foundation to help close the gender gap on and off the mountain. If you want to support the mission of the Alliance for Gender Equity in Outdoor Adventure, I'll give you several options. 1, you can apply to become a trailblazer through our program, the Cairn Project. Trailblazers design an adventure fundraiser that crowdfunds scholarships for the Summit Scholarship Foundation. Go to www.cairnproject.org to learn more. 2, you can spread the word about the Summit Scholarship Foundation to help us advance gender equity on and off the mountain. Check it out at www.summitscholarship.org. And 3, you can share the See Her Outside podcast with a friend. Every single share, 5-star review, or comment helps us share stories to get more girls and women outside. See Her Outside is hosted by me, Angie Marie, and edited by Allison Castonguay, with research by Danielle Peacher. Until next time, go get outside.